Now try to focus here. So in our previous class, we have just started about we have just started to understand what is Java servlets. Not this one. Java servlet. So usually, let me do a small recap. Java servlet are used to develop web applications. And again, what is a web application? When someone is asking you what is a web application, the simple answer is whenever you are trying to get access to any any application using browser. The browser can be anything: Firefox, Chrome, Microsoft Edge, whatever it is. The browser can be anything, but if you are trying to get access to any application using browser, just by using browser, we call it as the typical web application, right? But before even understanding about the web application, so there is always a problem in getting accessing to HTML pages. Right? When an end user in the sense you can call the end user as a client, or I can be end user. If I am searching for any content by using Chrome browser or by using any browser, I can be typically named as an end user. Right? If I'm trying to looking for any website, right? If the website is always returning a response, the same response, the same HTML response. If you request for the HTML page and if the website is returning the same HTML response, then we call those type of response as what? Static response. Right? Static response is something that is fixed and that is permanent. It will not be changed according to the circumstances. Right? We as a end user, we always expect a dynamic response. Dynamic response is nothing but the response which will be keeping changed according to the time or according to the situation or according to the environment where we are trying to get access to that particular page. For example, if I want to know the current time, right? If I click on submit button and if this submit button is giving me the current time, then that response is called as the dynamic response. Because tomorrow if I'm trying to hit the same URL, I will be getting the new time, the actual time, the real time. Right? So in order to develop any pages where our requirement is to get dynamic pages or dynamic responses from the server, we go for what? We go for web application, and web application can be developed in Java by using Java servlets. As simple as that. You don't use the responses will not be in the form of HTML pages. The responses will be in the form of servlets. Right? If the response is in the form of HTML pages, again it is static response. But we know we want dynamic responses. The responses will be in the form of servlets, but this servlet will be converted internally, rendered to be converted to give a HTML page in the form of dynamic responses. That's what we have discussed. So again, there are so many things, right? Look at this example, right? This typical example, right? When the client is sending any request, right? It will send a response. Right? So when you use serverless internally use what? The web container. Right? When you talk about server, when you want to get access to any web page, right? Server is going to have a container called a web container. Right? So a web container is just like a container. It will use to execute the servlet application, as simple as that. So in the servlets you don't have main method. Instead of main method, right, the request will directly go to the web container. This web container will check for an XML page which is called as web.xml page. Right? In the web.xml page, the URL that you are requesting for will be mapped inside this web.xml page. This web.xml page is going to fetch you the actual servlet that the end user is looking for. Very simple. Request is coming to the server as a container. Inside the container, we have the deployment descriptor. Deployment descriptor is nothing but a web.xml page. Inside this web.xml page, the actual URLs are mapped inside this web.xml. I can also say that this web.xml page is going to have the addresses of the servlets. Right? If I look for this servlet, this will have its address. Depending upon the URL that we are going to use, the response will come here, and after here it will map this response to the respective servlet. And after what happens, the actual servlet will be coming into the picture, right? This servlet will be sent to the end user in the form of response. And again, in the end user, the servlet will be converted to the HTML page to be displayed in the console. So this is what we have discussed so far. So these are the theory part. And again, there are some queries like, what is a server, what is a web container, and what is a servlet. Based on the context, we can define the servlet. Servlet can be an API, it can be an interface, it can be a class, it can be a web component which generate dynamic web pages. And again, what is a web application? So web application is accessible from web. So again, what is a container? Container is something like a software that don't have any main method. When you're developing any application using Java serverless, so when a typical Java program is going to have a main method because the execution has to start from main method. But when you talk about servlet, servlet is not going to depend upon the main method. Okay, if it is not going to depend upon the main method, what dependency it is going to have? It is going to depend completely on the containers. Containers. What is a container again? Container is something the specifically it can be called also called as web container. This is what we have seen so far, right? And to run this, we need a server. So the typical server is a Tomcat server. We need to download the Tomcat server, because if we're not downloading this Tomcat server, we cannot launch our application. This communication cannot be established, right? If we use a Tomcat server, it is like we are directly depending upon the serverless. Without using the server, you cannot extend to the servlet classes internally, right? So let us see one more example today for the better understanding. And again, I have also mentioned that the container, some things will be done by this container. We will see these things with the help of a small program today. Right? After that, one thing we need to ensure that we are like installing Tomcat server. On top of Tomcat server, we will be developing a simple servlet program. Without Tomcat server, you cannot prepare a servlet program, because servlet program is developed on top of the Tomcat server. That is why it is mandatory to download and configure the Tomcat server before even writing a servlet application. So these are the things that we have discussed in the previous classes. Today we will develop a simple application and everything will be clear. So today we are going to develop an application where you will hit the submit button. After hitting the submit button, you will be the actual time will be displayed, or I can say that the current time will be displayed. Okay. So let us proceed. So let me will take some more time to open this Eclipse IDE. Meanwhile, let me open the new page. So we are going to develop an application to display at simple time. Time application using servers. Eclipse is opened. Let me close all this. So make sure that please ensure that you are downloading and installing the Tomcat server before developing the servlet application, because without Tomcat server you cannot develop any servlet application. On installing Tomcat server, go to file, new. Here you are going to choose what? Dynamic web project. So name of the project can be anything. This time I am going to take the name as time application. So that is the agenda. So I am taking time application, right? Click on next. Click on next. And please make sure that you are checking this generate web.xml deployment descriptor. Because in this web.xml file, you are going to specify the servlet information. And again, the servlet information is like you are going to give the URL information that we are going to see now once again. Please ensure that this box is completely checked and click on finish. As simple as that. Right? When you open this, you will find so many subfolders. And go to this SRC. Under this SRC, you are going to find what? You are going to find this web.inf, right? To open this web.inf, you will be finding a page called web.xml page. So now focus here, this web.xml page, right? Here you will specify some information. What kind of information you are going to specify here? Previously, we have understood about a file called application context.xml file in the Spring framework. Over there, we will add the dependencies. Dependencies presence. Over there, we will create an object reference. We will give the class name so that we can able to use the object reference without using the new keyword. That is the concept in the Spring framework container. But when you talk about servlet container, here you are going to specify the servlet information. This page is used to specify the servlet information. Again, the servlet is nothing but it's a simple Java class. Servlet is a simple Java class that is extending the servlet class, as simple as it. We will specify the servlet information here. Before specifying the information here, let us develop a simple HTML page. Right? So go here, click on new, click on HTML file. So the name of the file can be anything, but the meaningful file name is always recommended. Let it be time.html. Click on next. Click on finished. So we have HTML file. Just to test this HTML file, I am doing what? Time application. Very simple. You do not have to worry about this HTML file. So HTML file is nothing but it is a concept of front end people, the people who are working on the front end, right? The UI thing, user interface thing, or I can also say that the end users. I mean, when you try to open any website, the things that you see is always taken care by the front end people. So no knowledge is required to understand this simple HTML page. Right? Whatever I am defining in this body, right? When I try to run this page, this will be displayed in the console. How it is going to get displayed in the console? That could be the question. The answer is very simple. Let me save this. Let me click on run as run on server. Click the server, exact server on which you want to work on. So I have the Tomcat server, so I am clicking on Tomcat server and click on next and click on finished. So Tomcat server is started. So this is what you get in the console. Very simple HTML page. Right? This is the URL. Right? This is the URL. If I try to use this URL, I get what? Time application. Why I am getting the time application? As a result, like if you go and see this HTML page, this is what I am trying to display. Right? So if you just convert this in the form of the diagrammatic illustration, what is happening exactly? What is exactly happening here? Client can be anyone who is trying to get information using a browser. You can be a client, I can be a client, or we can say that we all are the end users. End users are nothing but the people who are trying to seek some information or fetch some information, right? So now in this case, let us assume that I am a client, right? I have a URL. So my URL is very simple. This is my URL. For now, this is my URL. This one. Where is it? It's my URL. Okay. If I try to hit this URL, I am getting something. Now, if you observe this URL, the URL is like HTTP something, and the end. So this is called the endpoint. The endpoint is like time.html. So we are requesting for an HTML page which is time.html, right? What happens as soon as we hit this URL, a request will be sent. Request will be, a communication will be established. With whom the communication will be established? That's the question. With the Tomcat server. Where is the Tomcat server? We have already installed the Tomcat server, like Tomcat V9.0 server at the localhost. So the request will be transferred to the or sent to the Tomcat server. This is the Tomcat server. Right? So this is the URL that we hit. This is a Tomcat server. So Tomcat server will try to find a page, find an HTML page with the name time.html. Right? So internally it will look for this page, and if it will not directly look for this page, we have already specified the path. Right? This time.html is inside where it is inside time application, and again this time application is launched by using the localhost. Right, localhost 8080. So this is the address name, server server runtime address name, and the communication is established by using what? HTTP. It will get all this information, right? So it will be able to find all this information inside this particular application that we are talking about. So, right, after extracting this information, it will be able to find, okay, the end user is trying to execute this particular HTML file. The HTML file is already there, already designed, internally it is designed. And if you understand one thing, so if I try to hit this HTML file, at any point of time, the output is always going to be saved. Time application, time application, time application. So I can say this as the static file. I can say this as the static file, isn't it? Right? After placing a request for this HTML file, right, after placing the request for this URL, right, the server will be able to identify a file, the HTML file in the name of what? Time.html. Right? After finding this, the response will be given to the end user. Right? This is the request. This is the response. Request and response. So response will again, it will be in the form of what? HTML page. This is the HTML page. This will be traveled in the response response connection, and this will be displayed in the console. This is what happening. But the question is, every time it is static, but we want dynamic page. Dynamic in the sense, how we can achieve the dynamic pages? In order to achieve dynamic pages, we need to involve some other concept called servlets. We need to ensure that we are writing a code on top of the servlets. Let us assume that this is servlet. Right? We need to adopt the concept of servlets. Why we need servlet? Because I don't want static page to be displayed every time. In this case, it is like compulsory. It is compulsion that we need to display the static page. But sometimes I could be expecting a page like water. So if I open this, the time application, like while I am giving this URL, I should also be able to see the actual time. That is my requirement. Hope you are able to understand. So this is static page. Why static page? So even though if I try to execute this any number of times, the output is always still. That is why it is static. But I want the dynamic page. Dynamic page is something that's get created dynamically. It will depend upon the dynamic information or the real-time information. Right? My expectation is like as soon as I click on this particular URL, I should also get the actual time here. Current time I should get. To achieve that, we go for servlets. As simple as that. Without servlets, only static pages. With servlets, dynamic pages. Making sense? Just type S in the chat box if it is clear so far what is a static page, what is a dynamic page, so that we can proceed further. I want to ensure you guys are not sleeping. So just type S in the chat box so that we can proceed further. Okay. Okay, fine. Madhu? Okay. So now we are trying to understand how to achieve the concept of getting responses in the form of the dynamic pages. To that, we need to involve servlets. We need to understand what is a servlet, right? So I need a servlet. I need to create a servlet page to achieve the dynamic responses. So let me change my requirement in a like in a rudimentary way, I can say. So now my requirement is okay. This is okay. Let me open Eclipse. Here I am including a button. So this is a form tag. Don't worry about this tag, right? If I use form tag, inside this form tag, I can I can add some buttons here, right? Got the front end things, so no need to worry about this front end. Input type equal to submit. Let me rerun this. I have made little changes to this HTML file. Right? What I have just done, very simple. I have added a button, submit button I have added, right? So this is the form tag, opening and closing. There is an action. This action represent as soon as I hit submit button, the control will be transferred to this action. It will look for the exact location where the request needs to be forwarded. We will understand that, right? File, run as, run on server, localhost. Right? See, we got a submit button. But my requirement is time application. I am able to open the application in the name of time. After hitting the submit button, it should open another dynamic web page this time, not static one. Dynamic web page means I'm looking for the time, actually exact time, right? I should get the exact time, dynamic page. If I click now, it should give me 10:15. If I click after 5 minutes, it should give me 10:20. Dynamic in nature, right? I should click here and I should get a dynamic page. For that, I need a servlet. Hope you're able to understand. To achieve this, I need a servlet. So in this action, I can give any name, like I can give time. Let me give a time. Any name you can give, but why this thing is very not important, or why this thing is not considered, like why this thing has no specificity, I will explain it. For the time being, I am giving time itself. Right? So HTML thing is over. Right? I have done one more changes. What changes I have done so far? Right? When I open this, when I hit this URL, I will be getting this page. Right? But after clicking here, I need to get, now I am getting what something. See, the response is less HTTP status 404.04. Why this response we are getting? Very simple. If you go back to this particular code, right, it is trying to find the time value. I mean, it is trying to identify this particular value, time. It's not found. We need to specify this value, or we need to make some changes, or we need to map this particular value in the web.xml page. We did not do that yet. Firstly, that's why we are getting this error. Very simple, guys. Again, I'm repeating. Right? After clicking, after clicking on submit, the control will be transferred, or control will be redirected to action. In the action, we have specified a path, just like a path. It's not able to find this path because this mapping can be done in web.xml page. For now, the web.xml page is empty. Why this is empty? Before even defining this web.xml page, we need to write a servlet code first of all. Servlet class needs to be written. Right? Now I am trying to develop a class. File, new class. The name of the class is what? Time display. Any name you can give, but the time display is meaningful in this current context, right? So that's why I'm giving the name as time display. Now understand one thing. I do not have to generate a main method because container responsibility is to execute this program. So we as a developer do not have to worry about the main method. When you say servlet, servlets use container, they don't depend on main methods. As simple as that. Click on finished. The question can be simple. Do we use main method in the servlet? No, we don't use main method in the servlet. So let me delete this. I need to create package also. Let me delete this. My mistake. Again, I'm trying to file new class. So the package name can be form.volume.time application. Public static void main is not necessary, isn't it? Class name is time application. Finish. Very simple. Very straightforward. Right? So this is a normal class, I can say, right? But I want to convert this class to the servlet class. How do the conversion happens? Right? Very simple. Just extend this class to the servlet class in HTTP servlet. Now these classes become what? After extending it to HTTP servlet, it has become what? Servlet class. This has become the servlet. Let me write it here. HTTP servlet class, so that the current class would become a servlet. So because of this, just because of this, let me go back to the diagram. This servlet will get created. Now, because of these changes, because of creating the class, the servlet is getting servlet has got created. The servlet class has got created. You can create any number of servlet class, no issues. But for the better understanding, let us go with only one servlet class, time application servlet class. But inside the servlet class, what I am doing, like very simple changes. Right? I need to define a method. Public. The method name should always be what? You can use any method name, but it is very highly recommended to use the method name as service method. Service method. This service method has to take two parameters. I will tell you why we should take two parameters, but the parameters has to be like HTTP servlet request and response. Request HTTP servlet response. This is mandatory. To take any method and ensure that the name of the method is service method itself. Right? And the service method has to take two parameters: servlet request and servlet response. Why these parameters? These are the internal things, and these objects are created by the servlet. By the containers itself. You do not have to worry about creating these objects. These are the internal things. This is the rule. Right? After this, we need to display the time, isn't it? For that, I'm making use of a Java class, java.util.date. Right? Date equal to new java.util. I have created an object for the date class. So this class is going to give us the exact time. After creating object for this, print writer. Print writer is a class. You need to understand what is a print writer. Print writer is something, it's just like a class. This class will help us to carry the response to the end user. For example, like it is going to display the content to the end user, as simple as that. That's why it is called as print writer. So print writer, for the time being, just understand that the response will be displayed. Response will be used to display the content to the end user. Response not okay. So I am using the response object here, so which is also called as HTTP servlet response object here. By using this object name, I am trying to call the get writer method. These are the internal things. You will understand it after completing the servlet MVC concept. For the time being, use this to display the content to the end user, as simple as that. Now use this object out dot println, right? So you can write the HTML code inside here. That's the advantages of this print writer class. After creating object for the print writer class, by using this reference variable, right, by using println statement, you can write what you can write. You can include the HTML code here. So I can include like h1 tag, right, current date, and time is date.toString plus, let me close this h1 tag. Very simple, isn't it? So done. We have done with the code. This is a servlet code, right? This code is going to generate the dynamic page, right? How the things will be generated, right? In order to enable this, right, we need to use web.xml page. So let me talk about the control flow. The control will come here after clicking on submit button, like it will try to take an action. Action in the sense, after clicking on submit button, where this page needs to be redirected. It is getting redirected to time, but it is not sure where this time is mapped inside this particular project. Right? It will check in the web.xml file. We'll use the web.xml file to look if this time value is specified in the web.xml file. We haven't configured anything in the web.xml. Now we are going to perform the configuration. After completing this configuration, we will understand the complete flow of the server. Right? Just type paste in the chat box if you are good so far. 5 more minutes is pending. We will complete it. Type. Type yes in the chat box if you are good. Okay. I'm just checking if people are not sleeping. Okay. Just for fun, no worries. I think Pandu is sleeping. Yes, Pandu started sleeping. No response from Pandu. Okay. We'll continue. Okay, there should be two prominent tags that one should remember when you are writing what? When you are making use of this web.xml page. There are two tags that we will come across. The first tag is the servlet tag and the second one is servlet mapping tag. Right, this is also not required. Servlet tag and servlet mapping tag. By the name itself, you can ensure that these tags are used to map the URL to the exact servlet page. The URL needs to get mapped to the exact servlet page. Right. Servlet mapping. So this is mandatory. It is a compulsion. These two tags has to go together. You cannot have only this tag and you cannot skip this tag. You cannot have and the vice versa thing, right? Always, if you are placing servlet tag should be what? A servlet tag and a servlet mapping tag. These two tags should always go together. And again, inside the servlet tags, there is a sub tag called servlet name and another sub tag called servlet class. right? Again in the servlet mapping tag, we have a subtag called servlet name, and we have another subtag called URL pattern. URL pattern. Right? Now one more takeaway here. The servlet name can be anything. I can give ABC no matter what I can give it, but if you are giving ABC here, you should also give the ABC here, right? So it should be the same value inside the servlet name. If you are specifying any name, no matter what, you can give any name, but please ensure that this name is also used. The same name is also used in the servlet mapping for the servlet name. Hope you will understand. But the part is this servlet.class. You need to give the complete qualified name, right? So what is a complete class name? com.balu.time application package name followed by the class name, that is called as what? Complete qualified name, right? This is the package name followed by the what? Class name, time application, right? And the URL pattern here, right? So this URL pattern, you can give here any name, like let us say that I am giving here like slash dot time. What does it really mean? Let me save this and let us test this once. Then we will get to know what is it. Let me stop the server. Right. So go back to my HTML dot. From HTML page, you will actually run the server. So application has started, right? My expectation is as soon as I hit on submit button, see I am getting the current date and time. Now just try to focus here. 10:29, 10 hours, 22, 29, 49. Right? If I am hitting the URL once again for the second time, 1 minute. Take row. This is okay. 1 minute. This is the actual URL. Let me hit here. We get this page, right? After clicking on submit button. See, now time is changed to 10:30:42. Right? It is dynamic in nature. If you hit after some time, you get the dynamic time. You will get the real time. Right? This is achieved with the help of using what? Servlet. Right? If you talk about the control flow, right? Let me go back to this diagram. Talk about the control. This time, this is the request is same. The request is this is the URL that we are trying to hit. Okay. After hitting this URL, a response is coming. No issues. A response is coming. The response is in the form of what? Time.html page. This is the response that we got. Right? This response is static in nature. Right? After getting this response, what is happening once again? This is the response we got. Static page. We are clicking on submit button. Right? After clicking on submit button, internally, if you go back to this particular Eclipse thing, after clicking on submit, right, the control is getting transferred to like time here. See, the action is time. Right? From here, the control will be jumped to web.xml file. In the web.xml file, if you see the URL pattern that we have defined here is what? Time. It will enable this URL. Means very simple. This slash time will be added. Let's click on submit button. Just this is the actual URL. Isn't it? So click on the submit button. See, a slash time is getting added. The URL is getting converted. Right? This is the actual URL that we are hitting. The actual URL. Because of this URL, we are getting a static page, right? In the static page, we have like a kind of submit button. After clicking on submit button, right, the actual value of URL is getting changed to what? This one. Right? Now again the request will be transferred to the server. Second request. First request is done with this particular index.html. Now the second request is getting transferred to this Tomcat server. Right now, Tomcat server, what it does, it will look the details, it will fetch for these details inside this a web.xml file. Right, this web.xml file information and everything will be inside a container. Internally, Tomcat is going to have a container. Now container will come into picture. Why now container is coming? Because we are trying to fetch something which is a dynamic in nature. Now container is coming into picture. Web container is coming into picture. This follows what? Web container. Inside web container, right? Web container directly will not give the values. Again, internally inside the web container, we have a page called, we have a concept called deployment descriptor. Deployment, the name itself says deployment. What needs to be deployed? Right? Inside the web container, we have a concept called deployment descriptor. So where this deployment descriptor is going to be available, where these things are going to be available in the web.xml file. Web.xml file is nothing but a deployment description. Why we are going for deployment descriptor? So this deployment descriptor is going to fetch the exact servlet page that the client is looking for. Right? If you open this deployment descriptor, right, inside this we have did some mapping. Right? As soon as the submit button is clicked, try to fetch this URL, try to add this endpoint in the URL, right, and go to this class and invoke this class. So this is the class that we are trying to invoke. How this is identified, right? Above time we have mentioned the servlet name ABC. The same servlet name we have mentioned there ABC. Under this we have also defined the servlet class as what? Invoke this particular Java class. The control will be transferred here. It is able to identify the servlet. Right? After inside the servlet, it will invoke the service method. First thing is date. Current date will be fetched. This date will be fetched, and we are using a print writer to display this information in the console. Right? Over here, we are using information like what? Display this content in the console by using the HTML. Right, that is why after when I open this, go back here, this deployment descriptor will be used to find the actual servlet page that we are looking for. So this is the servlet page that we are looking for. Isn't it very simple, right? So this servlet class will be executed. Right, after having the servlet class executed, it will be sent in the form of response, the response object, right? And inside this particular servlet, what we have a little information, tiny information. What is the tiny information? Right? Display this. Whatever the things that we are specifying here, this will be displayed in the form of the HTML, because we have used HTML tags. It is dynamic in nature. Why it is dynamic in nature? So the moment you hit, right, you are going to get the current date. You're not going to get the previous date, something like that. I can add few more information, like it's one instead of current date. I can also say get date, get date, get day. Okay. On the date class, whatever the information that I have, date month, why it is being underlined, get here. Right. Let us rerun this. Stop. Run as run on server. Localhost, compare server, next information. Right, and I click on submit, so we get all this information. This is dynamic in nature. Right, when I hit this thing for the second time, right, again internally we will get the static page. This static, every time this page is saved, right? And again, if we click on submit here, what happens? The control will be transferred to the what? To this action, like time. We are giving a time. Like from here, the control will be jumped to web.xml. The web.xml, it will find if there is something in the name of time. Okay, it has identified the time, right? As soon as it will invoke this particular URL, right? And it will check for the servlet name ABC. Here also it is ABC. Under this ABC, we have defined the class, right? The control will be transferred to this time.application class. Right? All these instructions will be get accommodated in the response object. Response object is going to carry all this information, right? And the control will be transferred to time.html because the action is what? Time. Right? After a submit button, time comes, and after this XML web.xml comes. After this, time.application will be invoked, right? After this, all this information will be transferred in the form of response object. And this response object will be sent to the sent to be displayed in the console. As simple as that. And if I invoke this for the third time, let me use any browser. You can use any browser. Real value is very good. Dynamic in nature. So why this is called as web application? Because we are using a browser. We are using a browser to get access to an application, servlet application. That's why it is called as web application. So this is the simple explanation about why servlets. Right? So this is the basic structure of understanding about why we go for servlet and what is this deployment subscription. I will give you some more theory for the better understanding for interview purpose. So the first theory can be like if you memorize these theories, it will be easy for us to understand the servlet MVC concept, model view controller concept. After understanding that concept, we can able to understand about the Spring frameworks. It is going to be very easy. Right? Shall we good to go? Just type S in the chat box if you have understood, so that I will give you a little theory so that we can wind up. Right? Hello, are you there? Type S in the chat box if things are clear so far, so that Nirmala, Ravanji, okay, Pandu, I think Pandu started sleeping. Okay, let's discuss. Okay, so this is also one of the famous interview question to understand the flow. So I will keep this very simple. Let me take a new page file. Okay, so we have a client. So this is a typical computer. We have a server. So when I say server, we are talking about what? Tomcat server. So client machine and the server machine. Isn't it? Now the question is how the container is handling the request. How the container is handling the request, right? Before bringing in the container, so let me let us imagine that this is the client and this is the server. Right? The case one. Focus here. Case one, not case one, step one. Step one says, in the step one, what we are actually doing, we are just trying to hit a URL. So the name of in our case, the name of the URL is what? Time.html. Right? So time.html. I am trying to open an URL with the endpoint time.html. After clicking on enter button, this URL will be typed in the browser. After clicking on enter button, right, the communication, what we call it as, it will establish a connection will be established to the server. This is the Tomcat server. we're looking for a page. The name of the page is time.html, right? So what happens? The request will be transferred to the Tomcat server, right? Since this is a static page, it's going to able to fetch this time.xml, right? And the response will be rendered and will be transferred to the console. But the question here is, what is the job of the container here? Here we do not have any containers here. Container will not come into picture because after opening this HTML page only, we are able to see the container, because the submit button here, when you click on submit button, after clicking on submit button, these things are happening. So this is the dynamic thing. When there is something that is related to dynamic content, the container will come into picture. So this is the typical container, right? This container initially it will do two things. It will try to create the request object and the response object. So let me write it over. Container, this is two objects will be created: request object, the response object. You do not have to create object, you do not have to create main method. Everything will be taken care by the container itself, right? Request and response objects will be created, and there is a, for dynamic pages we need a servlet, isn't it? So servlet will also be there. This is servlet. Now understand one thing. We have a servlet, we have a container. Container is generating request object and response object, right? When this container is coming into picture, when you are looking for the dynamic page, dynamic page, and after looking for the dynamic page, right, inside the container there is another concept called deployment descriptor. Deployment descriptor. Why container is using deployment descriptor? To map the exact servlet that we are looking for, because in our system there are high chances that our project, there are many chances that we might be having a lot of servlet classes. We need to know, the container needs to know which exact servlet classes that the client is looking for, right? That information is available in where, that is available in the deployment descriptor, as simple as that. Right now the answer is very simple, right? So the main job of the container is to, it will create request object, will create response object. Inside this container we will be having what? We will having a deployment descriptor. This deployment descriptor will be used to map, or will be used to map the exact servlet. And as soon as the client is trying to call a particular dynamic page, the information will be available in this content deployment descriptor. From here, the exact URL will be, exact servlet will be called and displayed to the console. As simple as that. This is the job of the container. When they are talking about container, we should also talk about container is a thing that is going to have deployment descriptor. It is going to create request object, response object, and after this, the main method is not required to run a servlet program. The main method things will also be taken care by the container itself. This is the job of the typical container or web container in the particular servlet application. Making sense? So this is the conclusion. This is the simple conclusion. Right? And again, if anyone is asking you what is a what compare, these are the advantages of the container. It will give communication support, first thing. It will also help in life cycle management. Second thing, multi-threading support. We will discuss each and everything in detail. Fourth one, declarative security. Fifth one, JSP support. JSP is a concept which is going to use HTML. So we are also going to learn the JSP. These things will be taken care by what? By the container. The container not only does these particular things. Apart from this, we will also do these things. Communicate. After understanding all these things, the concept of understanding servlets will be come to will be coming to an end, right? And I don't think I have any more questions. Okay, tomorrow we will also discuss about do get methods and do post methods. There are two sophisticated methods that is available in Servlet: do get and do post. Right? So these are the concepts.